What if happiness is not where we expect it to be? What if it hides in the spaces between reason and faith, in the fragile balance of devotion and doubt? For centuries, Islamic philosophers wrestled with this very question. Is joy possible without God? Or is the divine the only anchor that makes life whole? The ache is timeless. We search in therapy, in science, in rituals, in success. Yet a whisper lingers. Something is missing. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." That spirit of inquiry, testing life against reason, seeded the ground where Islamic thinkers later flourished. But as they took up the question of happiness, they asked with urgency, is philosophy enough? Or must the soul bend toward the divine? Al-Farabi did not picture happiness as a private treasure, hidden within the soul of the solitary seeker. For him, happiness was not merely personal, it was political, social, and deeply communal. He believed the individual could only truly flourish within the framework of a just society, because the soul, like a seed, requires the soil of a community to grow. In his Virtuous City, Al-Farabi painted a vision of the ideal state, a place where rulers are not tyrants, but philosopher kings, whose wisdom guides citizens toward virtue rather than power or wealth. In such a city, justice is not an abstract principle. It is the very atmosphere in which people breathe, the condition that allows friendships to thrive, education to uplift, and virtue to be nurtured. Happiness, then, is not an isolated emotion or fleeting mood, but the collective harmony of a people who share in truth and goodness. Yet here lies the sting, the fragile edge of his vision. What if the city is not virtuous? What if leaders are corrupt, if laws are unjust, if friendships are poisoned by competition and fear? If happiness depends on the flourishing of society, then the fate of the individual seems bound to the fate of the city itself. Can one still be happy in a world that is fractured? Can a soul, torn from the soil of justice, still find nourishment? Al-Farabi leaves us with an unsettling paradox. Happiness is political, and yet politics so often fails us. His question echoes into our own age. Can we still build inner joy when the city around us falters? Or must we first heal the community before the individual can hope to thrive? If Al-Farabi saw happiness as a matter of the city, Avicenna turned the gaze inward, into the mysterious chambers of the self. To him, the fulfillment of the soul was not in power, possessions, or fleeting pleasures, but in knowledge. An ascent from the shifting shadows of sensation to the radiant clarity of eternal truths, he crafted one of the most haunting thought experiments in philosophy, the flying man. Imagine, he said, a human suspended in empty space, deprived of every sense, no sight, no sound, no touch, no memory of a body. And yet, even in this void, there remains something undeniable, an awareness of I am. This awareness, Avicenna argued, cannot be explained by the body alone. It points to a soul that is immaterial, self-subsistent, and immortal. For Avicenna, happiness was nothing less than the joy of this soul aligning with truth itself. With to know was to ascend, to brush against eternity with the intellect, to rise above the fragile world of matter into the permanence of divine wisdom. Knowledge was not merely information, it was illumination, the highest form of delight. Yet here emerges a piercing paradox. Knowledge is enough to bring joy. Why then do so many who devote their lives to learning remain restless, hollow, or even tormented? Does the intellect alone suffice to nourish the whole of our being? Or does the soul in its hunger require something more? Love, community, perhaps even faith. Avicenna's vision lifts us upward, yet it also leaves us staring into this riddle. Is truth alone the summit of happiness, or only one of its steps? If society alone cannot guarantee joy, and knowledge alone cannot soothe the heart, where then does true happiness hide? If Avicenna exalted the intellect, Al-Ghazali's own life became the crucible that tested its limits. A brilliant jurist, theologian, and master of logic, he reached the summit of intellectual success, yet found himself hollowed by doubt. His reason, once his greatest ally, turned inward like a serpent, questioning its own foundations until he spiraled into a paralyzing skepticism. For years, he wrestled with a tormenting question. Can reason by itself guarantee truth? His crisis was not abstract, it was existential. tearing at his health, his confidence, and his very will to live. And in that abyss, Al-Ghazali discovered what philosophy alone could not give him: peace. The intellect, he concluded, is a lamp, but not the sun. It illuminates, but it cannot warm. Through surrender, through the prayers of Islam, through the practices of Sufism, through nights of silence and remembrance, his heart found what his mind alone could not secure. Happiness, in Al-Ghazali's reimagining, was not merely a state of knowledge, but an orientation of the whole self. Not only thinking, but bowing. Not only analyzing, but trusting. Not only striving, but letting go. Modern neuroscience offers an uncanny echo. Studies show that rituals of devotion, whether in prayer, meditation, or mindfulness, reshape the brain. They calm the storm of anxiety, quiet the restless circuits of fear, and stabilize attention. Surrender, it seems, rewires us for peace, but this discovery carries its own enigma. Does this healing validate the presence of God, as Al-Ghazali believed? Or does it reveal instead the remarkable capacity of the human mind to create peace through practice alone? In Al-Ghazali's shadow, we are left with a haunting choice. Is devotion the proof of the divine? Or is the divine the name we give to the depths we touch within ourselves? If Al-Ghazali leaned toward faith, Ibn Rushd, known in the West as Averroes, refused the choice. To him, revelation and reason were not adversaries locked in combat, but twin lights that could illuminate the same path. Scripture, he argued, offers guidance for the many, a language of symbols and stories that nurtures moral life. But for the philosopher, trained in logic and inquiry, truth reveals itself through demonstration, through the patient unfolding of reason. These are not rival paths, he insisted, but parallel ones, different forms of access to the same reality. To sever them is to cripple the human spirit, denying either the warmth of faith or the rigor of thought. To unite them, however, is to honor the fullness of what it means to be human, a being both rational and yearning, both questioning and believing. In Ibn Rushd's vision, happiness is not won by choosing between God and reason, but by weaving them into a harmony. Faith anchors the restless heart. Philosophy disciplines the wandering mind. Together, they sustain a balance that neither could achieve alone. Yet harmony is fragile. The world rarely allows such equilibrium. As philosophy is censored, faith is politicized, and the two are often driven apart. And so we arrive at the unresolved question: is God necessary for wholeness? Or is God simply the most powerful name humanity has given to its search for completeness? Today, the debate continues in new language. Therapy teaches us to reframe thought. Meditation stills the restless mind. Positive psychology insists that meaning and relationships, not wealth, predict happiness. Some find this enough. Others say without God, the heart remains restless. Do we need transcendence or just discipline? Is fulfillment a question of heaven or of habit? The paradox emerges. Al-Farabi taught that happiness needs community. Avicenna said it requires truth. Al-Ghazali said it demands surrender. Ibn Rushd said it thrives in harmony. All different answers, yet all circling the same mystery. Happiness is fragile when reduced to one path. What if happiness is not found in choosing between reason and God, but in weaving together the strands? Ethical habit, social belonging, disciplined inner practice, and the courage to question. Modern science echoes what ancient wisdom knew. Flourishing is never one thing. It is alignment between mind, body, society, and spirit. So, can we be happy without God? For some, yes, reason, therapy, and practice can suffice. For others, no. The presence of God is the flame that gives warmth to everything else. But the deeper truth is this: whether we name it God, truth, or flourishing, happiness requires orientation, shaping of the self toward wisdom, compassion, and balance. Happiness is not a mood to chase, but a life to craft. It's not a possession, but an art. It is slow work, questioning, practicing, surrendering, building. And perhaps, just perhaps, the real mystery is not whether God is necessary for happiness, but whether we are willing to do the work of becoming whole.